Many stumble over God's quiet ways. We want God to act dramatically. God often acts quietly. We want immediate answers. God works through growth. We want control. God asks for trust.
मूलं समीक्ष्य यत्र गम्यताम् सर्वेषां मार्गं तथैव प्रवृत्ति.
My sisters and brothers, hearty welcome to you to the third Sunday of Advent. This Sunday of Advent is known as Gaudete Sunday. On this Sunday, the Church invites us to rejoice, not because all our problems are solved, not because our lives are perfect, but because the Lord is near. Today's readings speak of a joy that blossoms even in deserts, prisons, and long waitings. They reveal a joy that comes from recognizing the presence of Jesus even when life feels very confusing. The question of John the Baptist becomes, for that matter, a window into our own hearts. The Gospel of the day presents John in the prison. He who once stood strong in the desert now sits in a dark cell. Life has not turned out as he expected. He proclaimed a Messiah who would bring fire and judgment. Instead, he hears of a Jesus who heals, forgives, and welcomes sinners. So, from prison, he sends a question. Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another? This is not a lack of faith. It is the question of a man who is tired, disappointed, and trying to understand God's plan. Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the greatest Russian novelists and literary giants in history, experienced a life moment that mirrors the spiritual crisis of John the Baptist. At 27, Dostoevsky, already a promising writer, was arrested for being part of a philosophical discussion group considered politically dangerous. He spent months in a freezing, crowded prison cell, years in Siberian hard labor, life under constant surveillance. Everything he expected for his life collapsed. Everything he believed about God was shaken. Just like John in the prison, Dostoevsky sat in a cold, dark Siberian barrack, asking, where is God in all this? Why this silence? Why this path? Of course, John is not doubting God. He is trying to understand Jesus more clearly. It comes from the prophetic expectation. He expected a Messiah who would come with judgment. But Jesus comes with mercy, healing, forgiveness, and restoration. Jesus answers not with theories, but with science. The blind see, the lame walk, lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor hear good news. The very signs Isaiah the Advent prophet foretold long ago. This is often our struggle, my sisters and brothers. We expect God to act in a certain way, quickly, powerfully, clearly. But Jesus often reveals himself quietly, humbly, and patiently in ways we do not immediately recognize. John's question and that of Dostoevsky is the question every believer asks. Jesus, are you really working in my life, even when things look different from my expectations? A deeply spiritual and human moment. Of course, Jesus does not respond to John with definitions. He responds with actions. The verbs Jesus uses reflect Isaiah's prophecies. The blind receive sight, which spiritually means recovering the ability to see life through God's eyes. The lame walk, which means Jesus restores people's ability to move forward in life. The lepers are cleansed, which means Jesus restores human dignity from social exclusion. The deaf hear, not merely to hear sound, but to understand, obey, listen deeply. In short, He opens our hearts to God's voice. The dead are raised, which means God can revive what is dead in us. Hope, joy, courage, and conviction. The poor have the good news preached to them. The poor in the Bible means not only materially poor, but the humble, the small, the dependent on God. In sum, Jesus is telling John, I do not fit your expectations, but I am fulfilling God's deeper plan. Like John, Dostoevsky had to reconsider the Messiah he imagined. Before prison, Dostoevsky believed in a God who blesses the righteous quickly, a God who fixes injustices promptly, a God who makes life coherent. But prison brought contradictions. He saw innocent men suffer, brutal men act kindly, despair mixed with unexpected moments of grace. He realized God does not always appear in the way one expects. John expected a Messiah of fire and judgment. Instead, he met a Messiah of healing and compassion. Dostoevsky expected a God of immediate answers and justice. Instead, he encountered a God of hidden presence, interior transformation, and slow redemption. Therefore, the statement of Jesus, "Blessed is the one who takes no offense at me." The Greek root used for offense is skandaliste, which means to stumble over, or rather to be confused or disappointed. But understand Jesus well here. He is saying, blessed is the person who is not scandalized that I am gentle rather than violent, patient rather than forceful, merciful rather than punitive. Many stumble over God's quiet ways. We want God to act dramatically. God often acts quietly. We want immediate answers. God works through growth. We want control. God asks for trust. Look at the turnaround in the life of Dostoevsky. A simple peasant fellow prisoner gave him a New Testament, the only book allowed in the prison. He began reading it every night. He later wrote, "At my lowest point, I fell in love with Christ anew." The God he discovered in the gospel was not the God of quick miracles, not the God of immediate justice, but the God who enters dark prisons quietly, heals human hearts slowly, and transforms the world one soul at a time. This is exactly what Jesus told John. Look again. God is working, but differently from what you imagined. Jesus still praises John, and there emerges the surprising twist to the whole story. Jesus declares John the greatest born of women, because John is the final prophet of the Old Covenant, the bridge from prophecy to fulfillment, the one who prepares the way. Yet Jesus adds, the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. This means we have something John never saw fully: the cross, the resurrection, the Spirit, the church. We live in the age of fulfillment, not only expectation. Even the simplest Christian who follows Christ intimately is living a grace greater than John's prophetic moment. In other words, intimacy with Jesus is greater than any prophetic greatness. Like John the Baptist, Dostoevsky later became a witness. After his release, he became a prophet of compassion, a defender of the poor, a voice of mercy, a writer who revealed Christ through some sterling characters in his books like The Idiot and Crime and Punishment. It was in prison, like John, that his mission was clarified. His suffering became his vocation. Through the first reading, my sisters and brothers, the Advent prophet Isaiah paints a picture of deserts blooming, weak hands strengthened, sorrow fleeing, and the redeemed returning with joy. The desert is a powerful image. It represents dryness, exhaustion, the long waiting of life. Yet Isaiah tells us the desert will bloom. It will rejoice with joyful song. This is not optimism, it is faith, trusting that God can bring life where we see only barrenness. Your worries, your unanswered prayers, your illness, your discouragement, these are deserts too. But Isaiah reminds us God's grace can bloom in the most unlikely places. Similarly, St. James, through the second reading, gives us a necessary key to Advent. Be patient, like the farmer who waits for the precious fruit. We live in an instant world, but God works in seasons. A seed does not grow because we demand it. It grows because it is nourished in silence, darkness, and time. St. James says, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. My sisters and brothers, Gaudete Sunday reminds us that Advent joy is not noisy excitement. It's a quiet strengthening of the heart, a stable confidence that God is doing something even when we do not yet see it. Let's make a few resolutions to live the third week of Advent. First of all, rejoice consciously, even if you don't feel like it. Gaudete Sunday reminds us that joy is an act of faith. Secondly, practice patient trust. Name one area of your life where you are impatient. Release it to God daily. Lord, I trust your timing. And thirdly, strengthen someone's weak hands. Isaiah says, strengthen the hands that are weak. Do one concrete act of encouragement this week. Perhaps a phone call, message, or simple visit to someone who needs hope. My sisters and brothers, this week let us enter the spirituality of Gaudete Sunday, a joy rooted not in circumstances, but in the presence of Christ who comes, heals, and saves. Amen.
समीक्ष्य यत्र गम्यताम् सर्वेषां मार्गः तथैव प्रवृत्तिः